This is America on the Road, named Best Radio Show by the International Automotive Media Conference, and now in its 31st year on the air. Thanks for being with us as we bring you the latest automotive information from around the world. I'm Jack Nerad. With me is co-host Chris Teague. Chris, as always, it is wonderful to be with you, and I want to know, how was your New Year's Eve celebration?
It's wonderful to be with you, too. Our New Year's celebration was pretty quiet. You know, the weather was nasty, so we all sat inside by the fire and played board games. How about you guys?
I love that board game thing. We played Bananagrams the other night, and we just had a great time with it. I like word games. They're kind of fun for me. As an editor, I kind of enjoy playing stuff like that. Let's outline what we're going to talk about, Chris, because there's big news going on at the beginning of the new year, the beginning of 2025. Two major global automakers with big footprints in the United States have entered into talks to combine their efforts going forward. It's really earth-shattering news in the auto industry, and we'll have the details for you in our comments. A new year has begun, and it's time to make New Year's resolutions, and one resolution we all should make is to drive more safely this year. We have some tips from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration that can help, so listen up for those. Hyundai has just set one of the most esoteric automotive records ever, and we'll tell you all about it. It's just kind of a crazy record. Why is it even a record? And we'll have a quick look at one of the best luxury sedans I drove in 2024, the 2025 Genesis G80. I bet Chris had some good times in that vehicle, too. Chris, this cooperative agreement between these two giant companies is a very big deal, isn't it?
It is, and I'm a little puzzled by some of the details, but we can get into that in just a little bit.
Yeah. America on the Road is brought to you by DrivingToday.com, emlancy.com, the publisher of my latest book, Dance in the Dark, and Mercury Insurance. If you're looking to save some money, you should switch to Mercury for your auto and home insurance. Californians save an average of $670 with Mercury, so imagine how much you could save. Get a quote today at drivingtoday.com/auto insurance. That's drivingtoday.com/auto-insurance. Well, as you longtime listeners of the show know, Chris lives at one end of the country. I live at the other. Each week we get together to talk about cars, the car industry, and how you can have some fun with your cars. And what is your road test vehicle this week, Chris?
I spent the week behind the wheel of what might be my new favorite mid-size pickup truck, the 2025 Ford Ranger.
It really is a good one, isn't it? As I said, my test car this week, did I say? Maybe I didn't. But it is the 2025 Volkswagen Pro S Plus 4Motion, the Volkswagen Buzz. We have a terrific guest for you. Brian Jannusch is an expert on the Nissan GT-R, and I had a chance to talk with him about that. So we'll have some chat about that. We have tons of show for you this week. We're so glad you're with us for our new year of America on the Road. So stay with us, and we'll be right back right here on America on the Road. Welcome back to America on the Road with Chris Teague. This is Jack Nerad with you. And it is news time on America on the Road. We're starting a new year, and we're starting a new year with big news. Nissan and Honda have signed a Memorandum of Understanding, an MOU, to explore a potential business integration and a joint holding company. It's big stuff, but it's a collaboration aims to accelerate efforts toward carbon neutrality, according to them. I think it's also to extend the fortunes of both of those companies. Nissan, in particular, has been having some pretty serious difficulties here. They're going to apparently share platforms, a bunch of commonality here. This is kind of a shock, isn't it, Chris?
It is, and honestly, I've been puzzling over this, like I mentioned earlier, is what Honda could be getting out of this deal. It's not the leading automaker in the country, but it certainly isn't in Nissan's position. I could see Honda getting some EV technology and maybe a truck out of the deal, but I've been wondering what their motivation is here.
Yeah, I think there's and I used to work for a Japanese company back in the day. I worked for Mazda, and it's kind of interesting what the Japanese companies do and what the Japanese do. They kind of collaborate when one of them seems threatened. There was a time when Mazda looked like it was on the edge. There have been plenty of times when it looked like Nissan was on the edge, frankly, edge of going away, and they kind of get together. I don't know how it exactly happens, whether the government steps in and says, hey, why don't you guys get together and do something? But this collaboration, I think, is designed to prop up Nissan, which would be a big loss to the Japanese auto industry were it to go under. And I think that's the big deal here.
Yeah, and I think, the interesting part of this beyond the merger and the reasoning behind it is that Nissan is already in this alliance with Mitsubishi and Renault. And there's been talk of Foxconn, the smartphone maker, wanting to take over Renault's stake in Nissan. So there are a lot of moving parts here, Jack. I think it'll be really interesting to see what the company looks like, or what a combined company looks like when the dust settles.
Yeah, I mean, and to your point, too, I mean, this whole deal of involving Honda in this, Honda seemed like kind of a disinterested outsider to all of this up till now. And so the fact that, these are being shoved together in what might be kind of a shotgun wedding is really an interesting take. And you have Honda, which is doing, I think, fairly well. I think it actually does probably better in the United States than it does in Japan and some other markets. But and Nissan struggling, as we know, kind of worldwide. It'll be interesting to see how this goes forward and what this does to the Honda product plans.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the good news here, if this goes forward, is that Nissan has a chance to survive, a real fighting chance, a little bit more than they do right now. And as you mentioned earlier, they've been on the slide for a while now. Their dealers aren't happy. The customers aren't happy. So I hope it works out for Nissan because, as I always say, more choice is better. And I like Nissan. So
yeah, there's a lot of Nissan vehicles that I really like. And, you mentioned one of them, the Frontier pickup truck. I think it's a particularly good vehicle. And a competitor to a vehicle I think you're going to be talking about today.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, let's talk about 2025. Of course, it's a time for New Year's resolutions, many of which we ditch within a couple of weeks, apparently. I think they're saying, like the second Friday in the month is the time where everybody just kind of says no to their resolutions that they've made. But we'll see how that happens. But in any case, it would be a very good thing to drive more safely during 2025. So here's some safety tips. Feel free to chip in and comment on these. I think number one tip, of course, is always buckle up. Use your seatbelt. It's amazing how many people don't use their seatbelts still. And this is the one thing you can do above all others to protect yourself.
Yeah, and it's against the law not to unless you're in New Hampshire. So, I don't know. I think seatbelts, the dings in the cars are one thing, but when you really think about it, it's one of the most primary safety features in your vehicle. So, and it's very easy to use. So keep it on.
Right. Here's another one, and this is probably dear to your heart and dear to my heart back in the day. It is choose the correct car seat for your children, install it correctly, and then transition them to seatbelts only when they're large enough to use seatbelts and ride in a regular seat. I mean, you have, I think, fairly old young kids, if that isn't a weird oxymoron there. But I think, you tell me what's going on with them and seatbelts and boosters and all that.
One of the things I focused on when they were younger, they're 12 and 8 years old now, but one of the things I focused on when they were younger was installing the car seats properly. I switch cars every week, so I'm taking the car seats out and putting them in. And it's not hard to do, but you follow your directions. Many local fire departments, even volunteer fire departments, have programs where they teach you how to put the seats in and do it properly. And now that my older daughter is out of booster seats altogether, my younger daughter remains in a booster seat. We're still very careful with positioning and things like that. So it's easy to do. It just takes a minute out of your day. So it's well worth the time.
Right. Well, and here's something that kind of relates to maybe what we saw a little earlier in the week, and that is commit to driving sober and avoiding distractions. I mean, both of those things. I mean, when you're distracted, it is essentially like being drunk. And being drunk or on drugs of some sort, and we're seeing more and more of that, people behind the wheel. I mean, those are just tragically bad ideas.
Yeah, we complain about screens inside vehicles sometimes, but the reality is that they're there to keep you off your phone and give you some convenience without having to take your eyes off the road in some cases. So make use of those features. And frankly, there's no excuse for driving drunk or under the influence. So I'm not going to give you any tips there. Just don't do it.
Right. Here's some more. Never drive drowsy. That's another thing that's like being distracted or being drunk. If you're tired, or maybe you're taking like a cold medication or something like that, and you're a little drowsy, that can impair your ability to drive. And then you have to be aware of motorcyclists, bicyclists, and pedestrians. They're all over the place. They're where you might not expect them to be, and it's kind of critical that you pay attention to that.
Yeah, just a moment of double checking can save someone's life and keep you out of trouble and maybe stop you from damaging your vehicle. So I'd say take the time to do that.
Right. Well, let's talk about this Hyundai Guinness Book of World Records record, an historic achievement by the Hyundai Ioniq 5, kind of amusing to me more than anything. This is a standard production vehicle that was driven across India, about 4,900 kilometers. I think that's like 0.62 times 4,900. And if I could do math, that's the number of miles. It also had an altitude change of something like 5,800 meters. So that's about, 15,000, 20,000 feet, something like that. What is interesting to me, Chris, is this expedition began in Umling La in Ladakh, which, of course, is the world's highest drivable point above sea level, 57, almost 5,800 meters above sea level, and then concluded below sea level. So basically, they kind of drove downhill all the way. I mean, I'm wondering about it's like a weird thing to me.
Yeah, I was a little questioning this when you mentioned it to me earlier that we were going to be talking about it. It seems like a little bit of a silly record or a silly thing to do, but I can see Hyundai doing this to kind of demonstrate how robust the vehicle is, that it actually, can travel the range or at least close to the range that they say it will, and that it can manage with the charging network in India, which I have no idea whether it's robust or not, but I assume in rural areas it's a lot like it is here where you go a little ways and hope you can find something when you show up. So, it could be a neat thing. I do think that, these, some of these are just to get a press release out at the end of the year. So, you have to kind of take it with the understanding of that.
Yeah, exactly. So, good for them for setting a world record. I want to say a few things about this Genesis G80 Sport Prestige that I was driving, because I think it's one of the one of the best luxury sedans I've driven all year, and I'm wondering about your take on this vehicle.
I enjoy the G80. I think that, we've talked about Genesis' ability to combine value and luxury and styling, and the G80 really does feel like a flagship sedan. It's cheaper than the BMW 7 Series, the Mercedes S-Class, and you get a lot of the same compelling features. We talked about some of the large cars that don't push the envelope and feel special, but I think that Genesis has done a good job of giving the G80 enough of that sort of specialness to make it worth the price.
Yeah, and the price I think is pretty compelling too. I think around $70,000 or so. Much less expensive than some of the competitors from Germany, for example. So I think it's absolutely worth a look, and I wanted to give it a little shout out at the beginning of the year because I've driven it recently. So I like the vehicle very much. And when we come back, we'll be doing some pretty serious road testing. In fact, Chris is going to road test the Ford Ranger pickup truck, and I'll be road testing the 2025 Volkswagen ID.Buzz, a rolling parade. So stay with us for that, and we'll be right back right here on America on the Road. Welcome back to America on the Road with Chris Teague, Jack Red back with you. We're so glad you're with us on America on the Road for another year of America on the Road. I guess our 32nd year. It's kind of crazy that
I started when I was 9 years old, Jack.
Yeah, I started before I was born. I started when you were 30 or something. No, I'm kidding. But in any case, we have road test vehicles and pretty cool ones too. A Ford Ranger pickup truck is quite a competitor. And it might well be the North American Truck of the Year. We will find out in about 10 days' time or something like that. But Chris, you were driving it. Tell us about it.
Yeah, I spent the week behind the wheel of the 2025 Ford Ranger. Jack, I always like talking about the Ranger because of how it was sold in the United States for a long period of time and then went away for a decent chunk of time, came back in 2019 as the version that other markets have been seeing in other countries. And now we have a new truck in 2025, which also debuted elsewhere before we got it. But Ford offers 3 trims of the truck beyond the Raptor, which is new for the model year. I tested the Lariat model, which is the top of the normal lineup of the Ranger. You can get into this truck for a little bit under 35 grand, which is not too bad. My truck was a little bit over $46,000 with options, so still not too bad, a lot cheaper than a full-size truck. Jack, before I go further, have you driven the redesigned Ranger? I assume you have, given the...
Yeah, absolutely. I have. I drove it for North American Car of the Year testing. I think I was on the launch, too, and very, very impressed with this vehicle. I mean, I've kind of always liked the Ranger, but, maybe powertrain, it didn't quite get there, and I think they've added now a more powerful engine to the lineup, so I think that helps a lot. I think they've done a lot of good things with this vehicle, and I think it's terrific. Great interior as well.
I agree. The base engine, as you mentioned, is the carryover from the year before. It's a 2.3-liter turbocharged four-cylinder inline-four. It's an EcoBoost, 270 horsepower, 310 pound-feet of torque. The new engine for this model year is the one that I had. It's a 2.7-liter turbocharged V6. It's also an EcoBoost. It makes 315 horsepower, 400 pound-feet of torque, and pairs with a 10-speed automatic transmission and four-wheel drive. Jack, one of the things that I didn't love about the previous Ranger, as you mentioned, was the four-cylinder engine. 270 horsepower, 310 pound-feet of torque are not bad numbers on paper, but it always felt a little bit strained. It was loud, coarse, and a little bit unrefined. So, in a small truck like the Ranger, it doesn't have a lot of sound deadening. It's not a lot of luxury features in there, so you're kind of living with the engine sound and vibration at all times. The 2.7-liter V6 is significantly more refined. You get 40 more horsepower, roundabout there, 45, which you feel under your right foot at all times. And it's more refined, as I mentioned, so it's quieter, it's smoother, the power delivery is more predictable, and you don't feel like you're straining to get to highway speeds when you're towing. I actually got to tow a light trailer the other day, and so, it does feel more capable and more refined. Excuse me. Four-wheel drive is available for this truck. I had a four-wheel drive equipped truck. Otherwise, you get rear-wheel drive. I think that even without the Raptor, which gets more ground clearance, you get upgraded suspension and all those things, this is a pretty capable truck. We got about 4 inches of snow on the ground. I took it up to the fairgrounds across the street from my house. The ground underneath was muddy and not frozen yet, and it tackled it without any problem at all. And, there was never a time where it kind of stuttered. We complain a little bit, or I have in the past, about Ford's 10-speed searching for gears, as you start off. And I think they've kind of gotten some of that knocked out. The transmission tuning, the software feels like they've kind of refined that, and it feels a lot more responsive and capable. Jack, you mentioned the interior is much improved. You still get 5 seats in a crew cab configuration only. Cloth upholstery comes standard. My Lariat test trim had leather upholstery, heated steering wheel, and heated seats. Jack, I thought the redesign for 25 made it feel more ergonomic. It's more comfortable. Not a whole lot more spacious, but everything feels more composed and a little bit better thought through. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the ergonomics are better, which means the buttons and knobs and all that stuff work a little better than before. It looks more upscale, too. I think they've kind of upped the interior look a little bit, and that's helpful.
Yeah, one of the things that some of these trucks, the Tacoma, the old Tacoma, I haven't driven the new one, the Frontier also suffers from this, is sort of a lack of second row legroom because it's kind of an upright cab shape. We didn't really experience that here. We talk about my height. I'm 6 feet tall. I'm going to bring it up now. We haven't talked about that in a while. My wife sat behind me, and she's a little bit over 5 feet tall, had no issues at all. I think if you had 3 tall adults in the second row, then you would have some struggles there. People might feel a little cramped, but overall, I think you could buy this truck for a family of 4 and live with it pretty comfortably without too many sacrifices. Tech is one of my favorite parts of any vehicle that Ford makes, and so the Ranger comes standard with a 10-inch touchscreen and an 8-inch digital gauge cluster. My Lariat trim had a 12-inch vertically oriented touchscreen, so it's a portrait, and a 12-inch digital gauge cluster. You get Sync 4 infotainment software here, very responsive, packed with features, and the big screen looks great, though I will take a minute to complain about having all the features combined into one screen. It does make it feel a little complicated. And you do get some safety features here too. The Lariat comes with blind spot monitoring, forward collision alerts, automatic emergency braking, and the like. So for 45 grand here, Jack, I think this is more than enough truck for most people. You can tow, you have four-wheel drive, you have a good sized bed and enough interior space. So I think unless you need a full size, this is a fantastic option.
Yeah, I think it's a very, very good choice. A terrific one. And like I say, might be North American Truck of the Year. We'll see very soon. Well, I was driving a vehicle that essentially is a rolling parade. It's a one-vehicle parade. I mean, when you are in the Volkswagen ID.Buzz, which is the reimagined microbus of old for the electric era, you're driving in a vehicle that's going to attract a ton of attention. And this is a vehicle that I would love to love, and I will tell you whether I loved it or not as we go through this, because there's some things about it I loved and some things maybe not so much. But certainly from the looks point of view, it just has some really interesting touches too. It isn't just the box shape, but there's a lot of details on this vehicle. I love the two-tone paint, of course. It's very retro, has retro-inspired wheels, but there are other cool things about it that I think cost money that you would see on a concept vehicle, but would go away from most production vehicles. Well, it's right here on the ID.Buzz, so kudos to Volkswagen for that. I had a 1968 Type 2, what they called early bay bus. So I'm going to compare and contrast this a little bit with what I just drove. The current ID.Buzz has a minimum of 282 horsepower. Those are in the rear drive models. 335 horsepower in 4-motion all-wheel drive. Estimated electric-only range, of course it's an electric vehicle, so it's all electric-only, is 234 or 231 miles, respectively, so just about the same. Listen to the figures on this, Chris. I think you'll get a kick out of this. This Type 2 vehicle that I used to drive, I drove it back and forth to college when I was a college student, had a 1,600 cc engine, 57 horsepower, Chris, 57 horsepower. And here are the statistics on 0 to 60. 0 to 60, 37 seconds. 37 seconds, Chris. Not 3.7, 37. Top speed, 65 miles an hour. Now, I bested that when the wind was behind me. I think I got this thing up to 70 miles. And it literally was a vehicle that the wind made a big difference with. I mean, I kind of felt like I was in a sailboat. And as a sailor, I kind of got a kick out of that. Well, let's get back to the ID.Buzz. Charging is efficient, DC fast charging from 10 to 80% in just 26 minutes, so that's competitive. Big customizable interior, 145 cubic feet of cargo space, flexible seating for as many as 7. Usually it's a 6-passenger vehicle, which I find is maybe a little bit of, not the greatest use of space. It has a big infotainment screen that works pretty well, 12.9-inch infotainment screen, and a bunch of driver assistance system. Pricing starts at about $60,000 for the Pro S. My test vehicle, let's dive into that a little bit. It was a Buzz Pro S Plus 4Motion, so kind of top of the line. It had 335 horsepower, as I mentioned, a 91 kilowatt hour battery, so about 230 miles of range. It will tow 3,500 pounds, which is kind of interesting. And had the two-tone exterior that was, of course, inspired by the VW bus with retro wheels. I mean, what's your take on this overall, Chris? What's your take on the ID.Buzz?
The look is staggering. I think it looks fantastic. They did a great job translating from the Type 2 or the classic styling into the modern age. For me, I have 2 big thoughts about this, or 3 big thoughts about this. The first is that I'm sure it's very useful. Volkswagen does a great job at adding, clever features that people don't think they need, but they realize that they're very useful. I think the range is lacking and the price is too high. And you could say, well, it's a luxury van or an upscale van, but $70,000 for a Volkswagen just won't cut it for a lot of people. And even me knowing what the van can do, it's a little steep.
Well, you kind of cut through the chaff here because that's kind of it. I mean, it's not really a minivan. It's more of an SUV competitor, I think, than it is a minivan competitor because it's not nearly as useful as most minivans. I love the looks of it. What is interesting about the design is it captures a lot of what the previous microbuses had. But one thing that is very different is you sit well behind, as a driver, you sit well behind the front wheels. In the Type 2 that I had, I was literally sitting right over the front wheels. I mean, I was ahead of the front wheels. My legs were ahead of the front wheels. And that has some interesting results to it. This has a wheelbase of 131.1 inches, Chris. I mean, the wheels are at the corners. This is not that long a vehicle because it's not that much longer than that. But that's an incredible wheelbase, and what that means is the turning radius is gigantic. It's like turning around a super tanker, and I found that kind of interesting.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to have to park that thing in a parking garage in downtown LA. So I'll leave that to you.
Yeah. Some weird things about it. I mean, it has these toggles between front and rear window switches as opposed to just dedicated switches for those kind of things. I was able to set the side view mirrors, the exterior mirrors, once, but I couldn't figure out how to do it again. I mean, there's some combination of toggling you have to go through. So this is a vehicle I would love to love. And mostly I did, and maybe it's one of those vehicles where you kind of put up with the fact that it's not exactly easy to use for the just the sheer joy of having a vehicle that looks this cool. $70,000 was my as-tested price, so that's a lot of money for this vehicle, I think. But this is a vehicle that puts a smile on everybody's face. It's fun to drive. There's a lot to like about it. So mostly I like this thing. It was kind of an interesting combination of wonderfulness and frustration. And,
yeah, I think some of those quirks might be worth the price for some Volkswagen diehards. I'm sure they'll sell plenty of them.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And a lot of people stop me on the street and were wanting to talk to me about it. Well, when we come back, we will have a terrific guest for you. Brian Jannusch is an expert on the Nissan GT-R, so we'll be talking with him about that when we come back. Stay with us, and we'll be right back right here on America on the Road. Welcome back, everybody, to America on the Road. Jack Nerad back with you. We have a terrific guest for you. I love talking with guys who are just so enthusiastic about cars, and Brian Jannusch is exactly that. I mean, you do a lot of vehicle restoration. You're very enthusiastic about a wide variety of cars, but most particularly the Nissan GT-R. Thanks so much for being with us, number one. How'd you get into this? What drew you to cars and the GT-R specifically?
Yeah, thank you for having me. The GT-R is something that I actually didn't really see myself being something I was going to get as far into as I currently am now. But it kind of started when a friend of mine wanted to start a business importing cars to the US. And, we were both pretty interested in that 90s era of Japanese cars. And of course, the Nissan GT-R being one of the pinnacles of that area. The R32 Skyline GT-R Nismo got approved for show or display. So even before that car turned 25 years old, we had a path to importing it here to the United States. So we started doing that under show or display, and eventually we're able to kind of grow the market here until we're at where we are today, which is pretty deep into the world of Skyline GT-Rs.
Yeah. Tell us what's special about those to you, and what's special to the people who own and are enthusiastic about them.
Yeah, the Skyline GT-R was an absolute dominant vehicle early in Japanese motorsports, going all the way back to the 70s with the Hakosuka GT-Rs that were competing then. And where kind of things pick up for me is Group A racing with the R32 GT-R. It was an absolute dominant car. It achieved its name Godzilla for its reputation of kind of winning every race that it entered. It went on to race in Australia, again, doing incredible work on circuits there and Bathurst, really kind of deepening that reputation. And as it moves into the R33 GT-R running at Le Mans, all the way to the R34 GT-R, went on to be an incredible success. Racing in the GT500 series, one of the most iconic R34 GT-Rs or Skyline GT-Rs ever really is that Pennzoil livery R34 GT-R, which went on to be kind of the car for games like Gran Turismo and Forza Horizon, where you can actually race that car. And it's really kind of that video game era brings us to kind of where we are today for people who maybe didn't get to watch that racing live in real time as it happened, but gets to play the cars in the video games. All of that kind of tied together really does make the racing history of the Skyline GT-R a really, really special car motorsport enthusiasts, but also for collectors who are out there looking for cars that have that kind of motorsport
It
history.
seems like a lot of people got excited about that particular car from video gaming, right? I mean,
Right.
that
Correct.
was like the car to have when you were, a racer in video games, and a lot of people were driving them before they even really drove them, right? Before they even landed in
Right.
the U.S.
Yeah, a lot of our customers do come from that era of saying like I really wanted this was the car I played in the game, and it's not just the GTR. Sometimes Supra, sometimes the NSXR, Integras. Where you got these cars in the game, you got to kind of build them and spec them out, but we didn't really have the car here in the United States to be able to do it in real life. And as soon as these cars started to get to the point of turning 25 years old, being able to come into the United States, now you can take it out of your video game garage, put it in your real garage, and actually do some of those things that you did in the video game is a really cool experience for a lot of people.
Yeah. And the 25-year-old thing allows you to import them with, I guess, less restrictions or maybe very few restrictions, right?
Correct. Yeah. Once a car is 25 years old, it's exempt from emissions, which is EPA standards, and then FMVSS, so Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Standards. So from there, you can import the car, register it, drive it just like any other car. Some states do have some local emissions laws that you need to abide by, but outside of that, you can get the car in. So really, starting when we started importing the R32s, eventually the R33 turned 25, so we could bring in the next generation. And now, this year, 2024, the R34 GT-R, which is maybe the one that most people are kind of after at this point, just turned 25 years old. So we're starting to see a lot of those show up here in the United States, both in our inventory and across collections, throughout the United States. Mm-hmm.
I mean, you've worked on other cars too, European performance cars as well.
Correct.
What's kind of special about the Japanese performance cars? Because they kind of have a personality of their own, don't they?
They do, yeah. So I think for Japanese performance cars, what most people are kind of looking for and are attracted to is one, most of them were not available here in the United States or weren't available in the specifications in which you're getting now. The Skyline GT-R, for example, was never sold in the United States. There was no version of a GT-R sold in the US until we got the R35 in 2008. So the Skyline GT-R has had a lot of attraction that way. For other cars like the RX-7, the Supra, the NSX, there's different variants and different specifications of cars that Japan got that the U.S. wasn't able to get due to some of our safety and emissions restrictions here in the U.S. So you get these really collectible things like the RZ edition RX-7, which is the lightest weight one kind of ever built. You get an RZ Supra, which is an upgraded kind of version from what we have here in the United States, and of course cars like the NSXR, which is the absolute stripped down, most raw version of an NSX. Those kind of cars become ultra desirable just because they weren't here in the US.
Right. What's going on with rotary engine cars? I have a little affinity for them because I worked for Mazda actually back in the 90s and had an RX-7 for a while as my company car. What's going on with that?
Yeah, I mean, the RX-7 is a car that obviously has this beloved following. The rotary engines are very unique. Even going back pre-RX-7 on some things, you have things like the Cosmo, which is a really, really cool car, very early kind of car that sits alongside the Toyota GT and the Hakosuka. But coming forward to like the modern era of Mazda motorsports, if you'd call it, you have the RX-7, and there's some really cool stuff like the Spirit R, which was the last version of the RX-7 ever made. That's a model year 2002 car. So things like that are things, again, that we didn't get here in the US. The RZ, the Bathurst, that kind of stuff are really, really cool cars that there's a lot of collectors that are just waiting for those to turn 25, or in some case buying them now and storing them in Japan or in other countries until they're eligible for import to the US.
I gotta believe that those present some maintenance and restoration challenges that a more conventional car don't present, right?
Yeah, I mean the RX-7. There's a lot of hesitation for people, when it comes to purchasing an RX-7, just because there is a lot of rumor out there about them being a difficult car and a finicky car. But I think just like any other car, really from that generation, especially Japanese cars, it really comes down to maintenance, service, taking care of what you have, the preservation of the car, and not just thinking, oh, it's a Japanese car, reliability, I don't need to do much to it. You know, an RX-7, a GT-R, a Supra is not a Toyota Camry, where you can just run it, drive it forever, and then one day it dies and you get another one. It does take some maintenance. It does take some care to kind of, you know, extend the longevity of some of these like actually high performance engines. I think what a lot of people don't realize is that, you know, Nissan, Mazda, Toyota was putting these engines that they actually used for racing in these street cars. So you're getting essentially a race version of an engine, and you need to take care of it like it is exactly that.
Yeah, it's meant to run hours, not not
Right.
you
Yeah.
know, days and years and months.
Correct.
And
Yeah.
those kind of things, right?
Mhm.
Let's talk a little bit about racing school. I
Sure.
hear that you've gone to a racing school fairly recently. I've done a lot of them myself, and I learn so much every time I do it. But what was your experience?
Yeah. So obviously I wanted to kind of keep deepening my relationship with the Skyline GT-R, and you know, I did a restoration on one of my own, which was it was basically an abandoned car, and restored it to a really great street car. I took it to track one time and I got the bug, I think, as a lot of people do.
Yeah.
So I decided I kind of wanted to start racing. So I started in some time attack stuff, and then obviously wanted to graduate into doing a more advanced level of racing. So what I was finding is that I needed a full competition license in order to participate in some of these races. I knew I wanted to do it in my own car, in my Skyline GT-R. So what I did is I started building the Skyline GT-R that I'd restored into a full, complete race car. And at the same time, working towards getting my license. I went with Radford Racing School, which was a great choice. It's very close to me. It's in Phoenix, so really short flight to be able to get there. It's they also have an incredible partnership with Pennzoil, which I do as well. So kind of all worked out to be able to go there and do that. I went with my friend Larry Chen, who's a renowned photographer, but also has a huge love for driving and racing and Skyline GT-Rs. So it was really cool to be able to do that. I learned a lot immediately. Prior to going there, I'd spent a lot of time on track. I've been going to any track day I could, been doing some time attack stuff. Basically anything I didn't need a license for, I was doing on track. So I thought that I had a good understanding of what I was doing, and I learned very quickly when I got there from a lot of their instructors who have tons of experience that there were some habits I'd already picked up that weren't really good. There were things I was doing wrong, and there was definitely some car control and especially vision things that I needed to work on. They really helped me get through that. I, after that, entered a series, went out, started racing, and just huge improvements immediately. And I guess depending on when this airs and comes out, it's already official. I've already gained enough points to do it, but actually ended up winning the championship this year in the series that I raced in, which was really, really cool. And absolutely going to a racing school helped pave the way for that, because again, just your awareness on track, the things that you're doing wrong, the places you can improve are things that really does take a professional to kind of point out to you. It's pretty difficult to go there and just kind of figure this out on your own, I think.
Like a golf swing, only more so.
Right. Right. You know,
and
and the more time you take putting that off, the stronger those bad habits get. And that's one thing that, you know, I was really grateful that 2 years into me, you know, spending time on track, I was able to get out and get my racing license, because it didn't turn into a third year of me developing bad habits. And honestly, like, it's something that I wish I would have done maybe after that first track day and not let it go 2 years, because there are some things some habits I have that I'm still in the process of breaking, that I'm continuing to work on. But I do really think and would strongly encourage, even if you don't want to race competitively and you want to go to a track day, go to a racing school. You know, there's things you're going to learn that you're going to be able to implement on day one. And if you do go to the point of being able to get your competition license and go into, you know, the areas that I'm going into, it only reinforces that and makes it easier.
Right. I couldn't agree more. I want to get into your relationship with Pennzoil and also your desire to drive at Nürburgring, which is a great place to drive, let me tell you, having done that long time ago myself. Give us how you hooked up with Pennzoil.
Yeah, it was kind of funny. I got an email after I was actually at Radford Racing School prior to me getting my license, but that was in, I think, 2020 or 2021. I got an email and they were like, "Hey, saw you were at Radford doing some stuff. It'd be great to work with you on some of the Japanese stuff." And honestly, I thought it was like a phishing email. I think it was real because it's like, why is a brand like Pennzoil reaching out to me? But then that turned into a real thing, and it was really, really great to be able to build that relationship with them. The very first thing I did before anything was really test the product. Sent the oil out for some independent review. Part of what I do for my actual living is selling cars, sell Skyline GT-Rs and this kind of stuff to people. So when I recommend a product, I want to make sure that like I'm not recommending something that's going to be a poor decision for the car and the health of the car. And Pennzoil tested great, so I felt really comfortable recommending it. And I was like, let's see where this goes. And obviously, the history that Pennzoil has in motorsports in Japan with the R33 GT-R and R34 GT-R really fit well with what I was starting to do and where I wanted things to go. So it was a really, really cool partnership from that perspective. And one thing that they've been able to do for me, which is incredible, is to really kind of help connect me with other enthusiasts, other people that are going down the path that I'm going on, whether that's people who are just starting out or people that are wildly experienced professional race car drivers. So it's been a really, really valuable relationship from that standpoint, for sure, and just super great people over there.
Well, absolutely. And thanks so much for sharing all of this with us, Brian. We appreciate it. Brian Jannusch,
absolutely,
car expert and GT-R expert in particular. And much luck on your racing experiences going forward.
Yeah, thank you.
I have to follow that. Thanks for being with us. And stay with us, everybody. We'll be right back right here on America on the Road.
Okay, thanks for having me.
Good to have you. Good to talk to you. How do people get in touch with you if they want to get in touch with you, Brian?
Yes.
Show note.
Oh, sure. Yep. So my Instagram is at Brian P. Jannusch. So my first name, P as in Patrick, and Jannusch. Otherwise, our business is Top Rank Importers, and you can find us on Instagram at Top Rank Importers or our website, which is importofvehicle.com.
Terrific. Great. Well, so good to talk to you. I hope you enjoy your weekend. And are you going to do any fun driving over the weekend?
Nope. I just got done filming some stuff for Pennzoil, which was a lot of driving. So I'm going to take this weekend to kind of reset and get ready for my next race, which is in 2 weeks.
Good for you. Okay. Mm-hmm. Very good. Well, nice to talk to you. As I say, best of luck to you, and I hope we can speak again.
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you for having me.
Take care.
Bye.
Welcome back to America on the Road with co-host Chris Teague. This is Jack Nerad back with you. We're so glad you're with us. Thanks so much for being with us on America on the Road. It's listener question time. We love to get your questions and comments. It's easy to get them to us. Send them to editor@drivingtoday.com. That's editor@drivingtoday.com. And let's dive right into this question from Mike in La Crosse, Wisconsin, where they cool brew old-style beer, or they used to anyway. In any case, here is his question. My car ends up looking pretty shabby all winter. How can I protect my car's paint from harsh weather conditions? You probably run into that, Chris.
Yeah, I'm actually answering this question as my GR Corolla, which is black, sits in the driveway colored half brown and half gray from all the road salt. But one of the things that people do around here, I live in Maine, we have several car washes. They offer weekly subscription services. You get a cheap car wash every week and knock the salt and sand off of your car and keep going. I think that's a decent option. It's probably one of the cheaper options too. It's like $30 a month or something like that to do that during the winter. One of the other things you could do is take your car to a detail shop and have them clean it and apply something like a ceramic coating to the vehicle. That won't stop the salt and sand from sticking to the car completely, but it will protect the paint underneath. Some people go the extra step and have their car undercoated with some sort of tar or wax compound. But I think that's kind of overkill, especially if you drive a newer vehicle. And then one of the last things you can do, and this is also probably overkill for a lot of people, is you can wrap your car, right? You could put a vinyl wrap on the car that's going to protect the paint, but then you're just washing the vinyl wrap at the end of the day instead of the paint. So I think one of the better things, and I do this too, is I just take my car to the car wash regularly, and I make sure that I get the underside very clean and get it done that way. I think otherwise you're just going to have to live with a little bit of dirtiness on your car most of the year.
Yeah, I think if you have a good coat of wax on there, and there are a lot of wax and wax substitute kind of products out there now that just do a terrific job. You put that as a base coat, and then you keep the car as clean as you can through the winter. I used to go through that in Chicago, too, and what a mess, but what are you going to do? Well, that wraps up our show for this week. Before we go, I'd like to mention that as a late Christmas gift, I guess a New Year's gift for all our listeners, I'm giving away copies of the GR Factor, my book on interpersonal relationships. It's free. All you have to do is send an email to editor@drivingtoday.com. Say you want to get the book, and we'll get it to you. If you like our show, please pass it on. Listen on this radio station each week. Let your friends know where you hear America on the Road. And, of course, America on the Road is also available as a podcast and on YouTube and Rumble, right, Chris?
Yeah, it's absolutely very easy to find. We're on all the major platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, the rest of them. A quick Google search for the America on the Road podcast will bring us to you. Like us, please download us, leave us a review. All of those things help us out big time, and you can take us with you wherever you go.
We love that. Thanks to our Sports Byline Network stations for carrying America on the Road. And most of all, thanks to you for listening. We hope you'll continue to tune in throughout the new year, and please join us again right here for another edition of America on the Road.